Today is gonna be a little something more. I've got a plan in mind, a special thing in store. The light bulb inside my head says, get out and play, 'cause you never feel this way. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day. It's my lucky day, my lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold, a rabbit's foot or to be told. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day.
Hello, happy Tuesday, my friends. I am so glad you are here. I hope you had a great day, and I hope that you're handling the start of fall okay. Um, I know fall comes every year, and I know with that it gets cold. I know that it gets darker earlier, and every year I'm surprised when it happens. I'm dreading a little bit the day when I leave my office and it is completely dark at 5 o'clock. I'm not looking forward to that, but I do love getting to come home and put my pajamas on right away and have a really good excuse to not go anywhere. So, welcome, welcome. Super glad you're here. I'd love it if you would drop a note in the chat. Let me know that you're here so we can say hello. And I want to introduce my guest for today. And I'm so excited to have my friend Kerry Dobson with us. Kerry helps authors, established coaches, and creatives design and lead a signature group program which delivers real impact. Kerry spent more than 15 years in learning and development, and during that time, she obtained a master's in education and in workplace and adult learning, postgraduate certificate in adult and continuing education, and an associated certified coach, the ACC, from the ICF. I didn't realize that, Kerry, and now so much makes sense. How you always ask me the right question right when I need it. So throughout her career, Kerry was leading teams responsible for creating, writing, and developing group programs. In 2020, when the world flipped upside down, Kerry realized she wanted to do more than just share knowledge in corporations. She had seen too many groundbreaking programs fall flat or not quite deliver on results. She wanted to make an impact. So now she works with authors and established coaches to bring their revolutionary ideas and expertise to their clients through group programs. She helps you translate your wisdom so it's accessible to the world. So, my friends, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kerry Dobson. Welcome, Kerry.
Hey, Amanda. So great to be here.
I am so glad you are here. And I have to let folks know how much I like you as a human. So, Kerry and I connected here on LinkedIn, and we're connected for quite a while before we hopped on a chat. And I wish we had done it so much sooner, because as soon as we started talking, I was like, oh, wait, this is my long lost best friend. And how did I not know you were in the world? And how grateful I am that you are and that I get to know you. So I'm just so happy to know you and to learn from you and just get to be in the world with you.
Thank you. And I think we talked the last time we were talking, I shared with you, I had definitely been a lurker. I knew you. And then we ended up in a group together, some networking group or something. And I was like so excited because you were there. And it was like, oh, you're even cooler in person than you are on like how you write and all that kind of stuff. So I was super intimidated and I was like, okay, we got to talk. And then it was just such a great conversation. And I remember volunteering to be like your guinea pig. And I was like, oh, I get more Amanda time. I'll do anything. I'll do it.
I love it. And I will say, for anyone listening who is a lurker, jump right on in, because the people we meet here on LinkedIn, the people we get to know, the people that technology makes possible for us to coexist with in the world and to know we coexist is like the coolest, best thing. Like when I came to LinkedIn, I heard it was a place of opportunity, but I had no idea that it meant people. And I'm so grateful it did because I've just met the best people.
Yeah, like, and people that there's no way in other like, there's no other way that you would meet them except for on LinkedIn. Like, there's no other circle that would have overlapped to kind of bring them together. And, you and I were having the conversation how it's like, oh, we put this like caveat, my LinkedIn friend Amanda, and you and I officially dropped the LinkedIn part. But it's so funny because for people who aren't on here, I don't think they understand it, and I get it, right? Like, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But it's truly just such great connections and such great people who are here putting out content, kind of sharing their perspective. I'm so blessed with the people that I have in my network.
Yeah, same here. And I was reflecting before we hopped on, what about it? What about you and my connection with you just feels really good? And I think I can boil it down as from the very beginning of our interactions, I felt seen. And I thought of how valuable and special and rare it is to really be seen in this day and age where we're around people or, in the case of the last couple of years, maybe we're not around people so much. And sometimes the people around us don't see us for who we are. And so, what a gift it is to get to find those people and get to be those people for each other.
Absolutely. And I think that desire to be seen is such a human desire. Like, I don't know many people that don't have that desire, right? And I also think that so many of us end up in spaces where we aren't seen, and for many reasons, and most of them are not trying to be mean or anything like that. But it takes vulnerability to see someone else, right? It takes vulnerability to kind of say, okay, I'm going to listen and I'm not going to make it about me, and vice versa. It takes the vulnerability of someone else to kind of say, I'm going to show up and be honest. And I think that desire to kind of be seen is a driving force behind what I do. Not that this was like the caveat into it, but it's that, when I think about groups, I think of these sacred groups where it truly is those environments where everybody has that opportunity to be seen, to be heard in this really beautiful, safe container that challenges us, that pushes us forward, but is also just such a safe place for us to explore and experiment.
Yeah, and that is the perfect description of the best groups. And I know I've been in all kinds of groups throughout the years. And when I think of terrible group experiences, let's start here, right? I think of this one time when I bought workout plans from a trainer. And this was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I can make up my own workout plans. I just didn't want to. So I bought these workout plans and the workout plans came with a free membership to her free community, which sounds like it's a great thing. And I quickly learned this was not the community for me. They were not my people. It did not fill a need that I had. My need was for these workout plans. I didn't need the accountability for that thing at that point in my life. I didn't feel particularly motivated by seeing other people's motivational quotes and pictures of their food and their macro count and their sweaty gym selfies. Like, there is no there was no live, that she did that was great enough to get me to want to be a part of that community, and it's really important to know the difference between what's a good community for us and what's not a good community for us. So can you talk about that? Like, how would we know that it's a good for us fit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things to think about is, why are you doing this group, right? Like why are you thinking about doing it? Is it because it's free? Is it because it's available? Or is there something that you are actually interested in learning about? Do you have this desire to be part of a group that talks about whatever it is that it's talking about? So I think first and foremost, you need to have a reason for kind of saying yes to it. The other thing is for the person who's leading the group, I always say the most important thing you do is deciding who's in the group, because you need to make sure that you can kind of bring the people together. There's a shared desire to have a similar experience. There's a shared desire to learn the same things, try the same things, right? And I find sometimes, when I'm talking to people, they're doing a group program of some sort out of, I don't want to say desperation, but like in an attempt to build their business more. And it's so hard because when you're in that position and you're kind of like, I really need clients, but you're also trying to find right fit clients, it can be a really hard thing to turn around and say no. But we've probably all been in groups where it wasn't the right mix of people and it didn't kind of merge together and it didn't go the way we wanted. And so that's when you end up with people just leaving the group, never showing up, and it's kind of like everybody shows up for the first one. And then each week after, it just gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah. And I think we all know that we all recognize that feeling in our gut when something is not a good fit. And I'm thinking back to sales calls that I had that on one hand, I'm like, oh, I really want, X number of people in my group program. And I'm like, and you're not it. Like, it's just this pit in my stomach of
Yes.
now what do I do? Because this was not the plan for this call. And how do I do it and do it gracefully? Not
Yeah.
that there's anything wrong with the other person. It's just not a good fit for this program at this time in this space.
Yeah. And I think that's where it takes the courage for the person who's putting on the group to really be able to say that. For me, what I really like to encourage people is to invite them to a conversation to talk about how they can be supported before kind of leading it like, oh, you're in the group, right? It's kind of this, let's talk first. And it's through that conversation about, because sometimes the people that aren't the right fit for the group are a great fit for the one-on-one support that you can do, or they might just be a great fit for somebody else's group. And it's like, I'm not your person. This is who you can go talk to.
And what comes to mind when you say that is that phrase, there's someone for everyone.
Oh yeah.
And I used to say this all the time when I was back in the dating world, like there's someone for everyone. And I'm so glad you're not the one for me, right? Like there is someone for everyone. And I think it's really interesting that groups that I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be a disaster, somebody else could have the most wonderful experience with. And it all goes back again to what you were saying about purpose and reasoning and why you were in this group and really what you're looking for.
Yeah. And having, as the person who's leading the group, having the ability to ask the right questions, because sometimes the person who comes and talks to you doesn't know, right? They don't know what they don't know. So you knowing your client group enough to be able to say, the people who do well with me are, and then you can start asking questions that kind of lead you down the path to knowing, is this the right fit or not? But it's hard. Like it's hard. I have great compassion for not wanting to turn someone down because that feels horrible. You don't want to upset the person. You don't want to make them feel anything bad, but also to kind of say, oh, I'm saying no to a possible client, right? That can be hard. And I guarantee you, if you don't, you will end up with it's not going to be the group you wanted either. And so it's going to be so much harder for you to do your work within the group. And you're going to have to manage a lot more in the group as a result.
Yeah. So, can you take a step back and talk about how you really got into groups in the first place?
Yeah. Well, so what it started with, it's a funny story. I was in a sales job and I was okay. Like I was not fantastic, but I was okay. But I wasn't feeling it. And I ended up going to this workshop, which was kind of like a get to know yourself workshop, like lots of assessments, all this kind of stuff. And through that, I recognized that, oh, the values I had were not in line with the organization that I was working with. And that was the problem because I was looking around, I liked the people I worked with, but it just didn't fit. The other thing was, and this is funny, I was selling, if you can imagine, I was selling fax machines and photocopiers. Right. I mean, I scream fax machines and photocopier. And there was a person on staff that would train people on how to use the equipment once you sold it. But I never wanted her to come in and train people because that was the only part of the job that I liked. Right. So anyway, I discovered that training was a really interesting part of the work that I did. And so that's what kind of led me to go into training. And then with most training that I did, it was groups that we were working with. I was either certifying people to do one-on-one training, or I was certifying them to do group work.
Right. So that they knew how to run their fax machines.
Well, yeah. So I left that organization when I found out, like, okay, this isn't the right fit. But that was where I had my first taste of training, and just honestly, like that feeling and the look that people give you when they finally understand something. It's such a joy for me, and to be able to help people to get that with their clients is just it's like the biggest joy for me.
I absolutely love that. So, just an aside, a couple of months ago, I got the privilege of explaining to my 16-year-old what a fax machine was and how it worked. And she listened to me and then looked at me confused. She was like, "Why didn't you just email it?" And I was like, if only that was a choice,
Yeah.
right?
No, it's
Um,
crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
But I really resonate with what you were saying about that feeling when you're training somebody and they get it. So I spent 7 years as a school librarian, um, and there's nothing better than finishing a lesson or a class or a training and just feeling like, "Oh, I nailed this," and they got it, and it just feels really good. Actually, the highlight of my school librarian career was the time I got to lead a professional development on Pinterest when Pinterest was
Love
super
it.
new, and it was, like, the best because I got to do it to, for all of the staff, and I just remember thinking, like, it is really cool to teach something I am interested in. It did not take me long to figure out I'm not interested in teaching people who don't want to learn things that they don't want to learn. But when you have people who want to learn what you know and are willing to come and do the work, it is the coolest, coolest feeling.
It really is, and to be able to kind of see the longer term impact, because I typically the people that I work with, we look at longer programs, right? Because we want to have that impact, we want to go deep, we want to give reflection, all that kind of stuff. So we work with the clients a little bit longer, and it's like over time, just seeing the strides that people make, and when they do something that they never thought they could do or never thought they would do, and they're just so excited. I just have goosebumps even thinking about it. Because I in 2020, which you alluded to in the introductory, I was leading a global learning and development group, right? I was on track, loving life, all good. And then there was a COVID layoff, and it was honestly, I just immigrated to the US. If it had been any other time in my life, I would have just got another job because I liked what I did. But what I realized kind of in between layoff, returning home, pandemic was I loved what I did, but I didn't love who I was doing it for anymore. And it was because of that exact thing that you talked about. I was working with executives who were saying, this is what people need. And then you'd like go into the room and you'd be like, oh, that's actually not what they need. Right. And so what I decided was I wanted to continue to do the work that I did, but I wanted to work with people who were doing the work that other people really wanted and needed, that they were going into those spaces to help people.
So, how did you come to that conclusion? Like, what was your process? Did you think it out? Did you write it out? Did you talk it out? Like, what helped you find the answers?
So I joke that it was a lot of windshield time. So I I got on a plane February 3rd, 2020. I was in lockdown by March 13th, and then I was laid off by the end of May, and I had 60 days to get out of the country. So you could not have written this. And so I joke that I lost my job, I lost my apartment, but I had fostered a cat. So I wasn't going to lose my cat, and I wasn't going to lose the car I had bought. So me and the cat drive from Pennsylvania on the East Coast all the way to Alberta, Canada. So I think it took me 10 days in the middle of a pandemic. I had a wonderful girlfriend who came out kind of halfway through and met me for some of it, which was really nice. But I had a lot of time in that drive in particular to really think about like, how did I get here? Was part of the question. But then it was also as I was, going through the layoff and packing up kind of the life I had began there, I was having conversations with people about typical opportunities, right? Like what I would have normally done. And I kept kind of having this like dread with it. And so I had to get really curious about what the dread was and figure out, was this just a reaction to a layoff, right? It was the first time I'd ever been laid off. I'd never expected it. I mean, in hindsight, of course, during a pandemic, it might happen, but like was not prepared for it and all that kind of stuff. So, I had to really challenge myself to say, is this a reaction just to this rejection that a layoff was? Or is it something more? And I was able to really get to a clear point in that windshield time to be like, no, I love what I do. But when I think about going in and doing another, emerging leaders program, and I'm not knocking those. I loved those programs before, but it just was no longer of interest to me. Versus what I kind of play around in my head is I want to work with people who are helping humans be humans. So I want to help people who have meditation, journaling within their programs that are really helping people to just be human, because being human can be a difficult thing sometimes versus, what's the next regulation or the next round of anti-sexual harassment training, right? Like again, no knocking to that. I'd done it and it was time for me to kind of say, okay, I want to do something else.
And the feeling of delivering something that makes a difference, that people want to learn. So that they're listening and participating and not just there because they have to check a box. So they're listening and it's going in one ear and out the other. And 2 weeks later, they're not going to remember a thing that you told them.
Yeah. And, a big part of that, a big part of the hurdle in kind of the organizational learning place is that it doesn't matter what you're trained to do. What you see happen in the environment is what you're going to model. You have to be extremely committed to go against what's being modeled for you, right? And so that was one of the struggles that I always had with organizational is we might do these great programs, but then they would go back to their workplace and it was just the same thing because everybody around them was doing the same thing versus the kind of groups that I really help people put together are these kind of longer term ones where it's like this group is committed to changing behavior and kind of changing the way they show up in the world. And that's the group that helps you kind of get through that part of like, oh, no one else in my real world has changed, but I've changed. And it's this group that I'm part of that helps me make that change.
I absolutely love how you describe it. I've got goosebumps
Totally,
actually
right?
just thinking
Yeah.
about it. So when you say longer term group,
Yeah.
what does longer mean to you?
So listen, I don't want to say that you have to do it for a certain amount of time, but I also think we need to be really clear with people about what they can do. My personal opinion is 6 months or less, it's almost impossible to make real change that's long lasting. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like this intense, we're together all the time period, but there's support kind of through it. So I always talk about after program support. So I'm okay if the program might be a little bit shorter, but then I want to see an after program support that's a lot longer, that's in that 6 months to a year point. Because, first of all, to get people together to create those environments where they do feel seen and they do feel heard takes time, right? Like we can do great things to make it speed up and make it really safe as soon as possible, but it takes time, right? So you want the time to build it up. You want the time for the learning to take place. You want the time for them to apply it in their life, to integrate it, to get feedback, to celebrate, to fail and get back up, right? All those things are part of what happens as we're trying to change things. And so you need enough time for them to experience that in this safe container. And then you need some time as that after program support to say, okay, like you're on your own, but we're still here for you.
Yeah, that is a beautiful way to put it. And I love what you said about how we can do things to speed up the feeling, I can't remember your exact words, but the feeling of groups. And it's interesting. So I got into groups accidentally. Um, I didn't mean to set out doing groups. It started as a one off comment by a connection of mine here on LinkedIn who left me a voice note and said, I really want a journal. I know it would be helpful to me, but I can't make myself do it for me. But I would do it if I was accountable to somebody else. And I was like, cool, well, let's see. And I just kind of figured it out. And it was an experiment to see if she would show up and an experiment to see how I liked it. Right. And our quick 5-day program led into a month, which led into another month, which led into a revamp, which led to something else. And it was a good year, I think, before I realized how much I had to do with the magic that showed up in my groups. Because I would say to people, um, I'm just floored how people are willing to be vulnerable and authentic and really share deeply right from the very beginning. I think I realized this in January. I was running a program called Better Me in 23, where every month we focused on a different topic. And in January, it was better body, which was my play on New Year's resolution, not necessarily, to eat well and take care of your body, but really just appreciate and take better care of the beautiful bodies that we're in. And we started as a group of strangers day one. And our first prompt was, how do you feel about your body? Be honest and be specific. And these brave women did. And I was like, holy cow. And someone pointed out to me, they're like, that doesn't just happen. Like you did such a great job of setting up these spaces. And I see it in the longer groups that I run. I see it in my one-off groups that I run. Just it's so important to be able to set that stage and make people feel comfortable because it's the sharing in the groups that's really magical. I love being in groups. I love group coaching because sometimes I don't know what to ask and I don't know what to even think about asking. But when I listen to the experiences of other people who might be a little further down the road, or they might, their journey may have taken them a different way, it gives me an opportunity to learn through their experiences, which is really cool because it's great to learn from people one on one if that's your jam. But you get a totally different kind of learning when you're in a group.
Yeah, when you're in the right kind of group, right? But
Yes.
it's so true, and I always feel like, the work that I do is so easy because there's a magic component to it. Now, there's things you have to do to create the environment for the magic to happen, and there's really big responsibilities in that. But at the end of the day, it's about creating the space so that magic can happen. And I always say, like, you're kind of got these firm arms around your group. So it's these boundaries that you're holding people. But then as they play and hear, it's up to them where it goes. And so having that flexibility, but you need those really strong boundaries to be able to do that.
Yeah, that is a beautiful, beautiful analogy. Oh, I love that. I'm
It's
gonna
like a
tuck
hug.
that away and remember it the next time I'm in a group. I don't think I'm gonna be able to unsee that imagery.
Yeah. And you know instantly if you're in a group that someone's holding firm boundaries or not. I kind of, to me there's two ends of like the extremes. There's like the people who hold such firm boundaries that everything has to happen this way and it's only their way and they're talking a lot and they're trying to control everything. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the people who are trying to make it so magical that there's no boundaries and so everybody's just kind of floating around and it's unsafe, right? But it's this place of firm boundaries, but then there's this openness within the firm boundaries.
Yeah. So, what advice do you have for folks who are looking to run a group? How do people know it's time to have a group? How do you know you're capable of running a group? How do you know how to put together a group?
So if you're putting together a group because you don't have enough business one-on-one, don't have a group. That's first of all. The second don't have a group because everybody tells you that's the way to scale. And the third one, don't do groups because you think it's passive income. I don't know any I don't know anybody who runs a group that it would say that it's passive. Again, it's repeatable. There's lots of great things about it, but it's not passive. So I would say first and foremost, make sure that you're not in one of those three, because if you are, it's just not the right time, or groups might not be the right thing for you. And that is okay. Like I was on a call a couple weeks ago, and through the conversation, I ended up saying, "Do you want to have a group?" And she was quiet for a bit, and she's like, "I don't think I do." And I was like, permission granted. Like, it felt like she just needed that, not that it's my permission to give, but she needed permission to be able to be like, I can grow my business the way that I like to work with clients, which is one-on-one. And it's like, yes, not everybody needs to have a group. And I'm the group person. I mean, I see groups in everything, but you don't have to have one. So to me, that's first and foremost, is make sure that the reason you're interested in having a group comes from a real desire to have a group, as well as a community or a group of people that want that group, right? In your example is perfect, where it's like, listen, I want to do this, but I need something here. I need people to help me with accountability. That's a really good sign. And so you really want to look at, is it the right thing for you, for your business, and for your client group? And if you kind of get to a yes there, that's when you want to start thinking about, okay, what does this look like? And what I find is most people jump into like planning that first session, right? Like they start, the list is like, what am I going to do? And I want everybody to take a step back. And before they get into that, because that's the fun part, and it's lots of fun and it will come. But before you do that, is really figuring out, what is your program promise? What are you promising that your participants will experience and or achieve in the time with you? Because once you know what that is, everything else is so easy to decide, because it's all in service of your program promise.
That is beautifully, beautifully said. So, what advice do you have for folks who are looking for a group of some kind? How do you know a group is the right fit for you?
So first and foremost is figuring out, what is it that you're looking for, right? So I joke that no one Googles like group programs, right? Like, what are you Googling for support on? So that's the first thing, is getting really clear is, what are you looking for? And then it's about asking questions, to your point, right? Like finding out, how does this group work? How, what is expected? What times are they meeting? Getting the real logistics of it, but also talking to the person who's going to lead the group. Have that conversation with them to see, are they a good fit? You're going to know pretty quickly if they are, if they're not. But what is important to you? Like, so for me, when I'm in a group, I really want the opportunity to connect with people individually too. I don't just want it to be like this 25 person group and that we never talk to each other. So I look for smaller groups, and I look for groups that have either the opportunity to have, a one-on-one, or like a one-on-two or three kind of small group that I'm part of, or an accountability partner, because that's how I really like to connect with people. I love to be part of the big group, but then I also want to have some time to really connect kind of one-on-one with people. So that for me is what's important, but that's not important for everybody. So figuring it out. And I do think some of it's just trial and error. I know some people who love Slack, right, and love the ability to connect on it. I can't follow it. Like, I'm not in it enough. So by the time I go in, I get behind, all that kind of stuff. So it really is, part of it's trial and error. And to me, the number one decision is, who are you working with? And do you trust them to hold space the way you need it to be held?
Yeah. And that holding space is a gift for sure. It is a gift that some of us have, and it's a gift the rest of us we can learn to have it, which I
Yeah.
think is the coolest part of talents and strengths and gifts, is we can decide we want them and work toward them.
Yeah. Yeah, and holding space really is something that can be taught, and so much of it, it doesn't appear like it, but there's strategy behind it, and there's an order to how you do things, and there's the order to what role you're playing in the group at certain times in the group's like time together. So it's definitely learnable, if that's a word.
And I also love how in a group that's a really good fit for me, I not only do I feel like people are holding space for me, but I get to hold space for them. And it's a communal space holding, and that we all hold a community space, but then we also hold the spaces for each other.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been playing around, and it'll come out eventually in my content, but I've been playing around with this idea of that you're a guide to your group. And sometimes you're at the front of the pack because you're leading the way and you're showing them the path. And, we're training at that point. We're sharing wisdom. Other times you're at the back of the pack, right? And you're just letting them kind of do what they need to do. But you're still part of it so you can see everybody's okay. And then sometimes you're in the pack. And sometimes you're having these really great conversations and there is no real difference, or if someone was looking at it, they wouldn't necessarily know that you're the guide, but you're always still kind of aware of what's going on so you can move into that back of the pack or front of the pack when it's needed.
Yeah, that is really cool imagery. I'm thinking of like sled dogs and the
Right.
Iditarod. That's like
Yes.
totally what came to mind.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit more specifically about how you help people, who you help, what that looks like? How do folks work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, typically, I always joke about the fact that I, as the group person, do not have a group. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, I don't have a big enough community at this point in time to kind of put on a group program. So I just want to be really transparent and say it's okay. You don't always have the group for it. But the other thing is, I find most people don't want to they want to make decisions about their own group. People are most likely to reach out to me and be like, I want to have a group in 6 weeks to, 12 weeks from now. Like there's kind of a intensity and a duration around it. So I typically work one-on-one with people. I work with everybody from that kind of like just a strategy session where we're just kind of talking about your group and you've got a pretty good idea, but you just want to get some direction and some ideas, all the way to like, I will hold your hand. We will go through it. I will actually put together the first draft of your program based on our conversation. I will put your module by module plan together, help you put the resources together. So there's kind of this whole gamut. And then the other thing that I help people with is facilitation, or the leading or the guiding, because that's where some people get scared, right? The technology of it. How do I show up? What does that look like? So I also do some one-on-one work with people to help them get ready for that.
Can you talk for just a minute? In-person groups versus virtual groups. Like, I love doing my stuff online. I think for what I do, which is running journaling groups, it's nice for people to be in their own space when they're doing this deep reflective work. But I know lots of people who are just over Zoom and just want to be where the people are. Do you see differences between how you run a group online and how you run it in person?
So part of it is no, like a group is a group is a group. It's just the technology that you use and kind of the methods that you use to do it is a little different online or in person. That said, there's something about being together as humans. There's energy, all that kind of stuff. But there's also typically limits, right, to how people can get together. So for me, that's the last question I kind of ask is like, how are you envisioning this? To me, it's more about what suits you as a person, what suits your community, who, are they going to show up? For example, when I work with people on retreats, right? So many people think, oh, a retreat, we're just going to go and retreat. It's going to be great. And then I'm sitting here like, no, what's the after program support? And let's bring in the technology. Let's bring in the online world so that integration, that kind of community support can last. Because so many times at the end of a retreat, everybody's hugging and it's like, we're going to stay in touch. And like nothing happens. So to me, I think even if you do in person, there's got to be an after program support plan there to help people stay connected and help that integration really take place.
Yeah. And so tell me, if you don't mind sharing, how many groups are you in right now? Do you have lots of groups that you're in?
So I'm kind of picky, right? Because the worst students are teachers, right? Like, so for me, I'm really, really picky. So I'm in two different groups right now, and they're wonderful and beautiful, and I feel very blessed to do that. That said, the coach that I'm working with right now, Laura West, I had an opportunity to work in her group, which she has a great group. Like it wasn't that, but it was like, no, I want one-on-one. I wanted and needed that. So it's funny, but I'm always on the lookout for the groups that I'm interested in. I'm also, you and I are the same this way. I am interested in learning almost anything other than accounting. I think, like that's the one thing where I'm kind of like, I can be interested in anything. So I've actually found this year in 2023, I've been really, really focused on, I have 3 priorities. And if whatever the email that comes along, the post that comes along, the invitation to something that comes along, I have to compare it to those 3 priorities. So I've said no to a lot of things this year that any other year I would have been like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, we are totally alike in this respect. So I had some spare time a few weeks ago and I was searching for a basket weaving workshop. That was the intent for my thing. I wanted a one day go weave a basket and then be done. And I found myself reading about a 4-month intensive wilderness, live in the woods, survival skills school where you have to weave your own baskets to collect all your food. So that's how I got there. But I was like, oh, well, how can I rearrange my life so I can take a 4-month sabbatical from work and from my family and from everything? And I got
Totally.
home. My husband's like, no,
No.
no,
Yeah.
we need
It's
you. You can't run
right.
off to
You
the
can't.
woods. And by the way,
Exactly.
you don't like ticks or sweat or bugs or, any of those things.
So we've talked about this in our personal conversations, but the human design as a manifesting generator, I can get super excited about anything. So I always joke with people like, if you have a sales page, send it to me because I'll be like so excited about it for you. But with manifesting generator, what I've learned is I have to give it time before I say yes. So I can get excited almost about anything. And so it's then saying, okay, I'm not going to make the decision. So that's been part of this year for me, is saying, okay, I'm not hitting the buy button. I'm not signing up for that. I'm not doing it until I've given it at least 24 hours. And is it still of interest to me? And it's amazing how much is less interesting even 24 hours later.
Yeah, that is really great advice. It's right up there with when I go shopping. Before I even look at a price tag, I will make up in my head a price of what I feel is the fair value for that thing. And
Ooh,
so if I say that dress is a $50 dress and the tag says 52.99, I don't buy that dress. And I walk away from things for a dollar or less because, in my mind, here is the value. So being able to really be particular about how we use our energy and our time because there are so many great things in the world and there's so many exciting people doing exciting things. I was just talking yesterday with Jen Espinosa Goswami, and we were talking about how cool it would be to do like taster sessions with people
right?
just to like scratch the itch, like come and do a journaling session with me. Cool, I did it, check off the box, right? For those people who like me who just want to try all of the things. So my wheels are turning for
Totally.
all kinds of
There's like
things.
a passport in this, like a LinkedIn passport of like, for sure. There's
That was
something here.
exactly the word I used when I was journaling about it this morning, was passport. Yeah, I absolutely love it. So, um, groups. While we're talking about groups, I do want to slip in here that I have a really cool group that I run. It's a program that's perfect for people who want to journal, who maybe have a great journaling program or journaling practice, but just find that they don't always know what to journal about. Or they could be brand new to journaling and just don't know where to start. And this is a program that really holds your hand, feeding you journal prompts. curated journal prompts that take you on an adventure every month, an adventure into self discovery on a different theme. So, next month, we're exploring gratitude. In December, we're doing this really thorough end of year evaluation, end of year reflection and goal setting process. January, we're diving into habits. So, if you are listening and you are interested, drop me a message. I would love to chat with you about it. And Kerry, how can people get in touch with you?
Honestly, LinkedIn. LinkedIn. I don't really show up anywhere else. So just hit me up on here, send me a DM, connect. I do a group, a complimentary group clarity session. So if that's something of interest, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I can get you the details for that. For me, it's all about, just being available to have the conversations. If I can help you improve your group just a little bit, just from a conversation, I'm happy.
Beautiful. Well, Kerry, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for chatting. My friends, thank you for tuning in. And we will see you next time.
Bye.